Hey there! Welcome to Product Marketing Genius. I'm your host, Nitin Karthik. As Director of Product Marketing and a top product marketing voice, I've always found that real world case studies are the true litmus test for the effectiveness of any product marketing strategy. And that is why in this show, we dive into the minds of industry titans, as well as rising stars, unpacking their expertise in action packed episodes that showcase the power of product marketing through real world case studies. And today, my friends, we are joined by product marketing genius Zach Roberts, who is co host of We're Not Marketers, the podcast. And he's also founder of Break Into Product Marketing. Zach is recognized as a top 100 product marketing thought leader by the Product Marketing Alliance. His company, Break Into Product Marketing, helps B2B product marketing leaders in SaaS close the divide across sales and marketing teams. Previously at Dropbox, as product marketing manager, Zach launched multiple successful sales plays that delivered millions of dollars in annual recurring revenue. Zach is also a recipient of the coveted Newcomer of the Year award in 2022. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Zach Roberts. Zach, it's an absolute honor to have you on the show.
It's an absolute pleasure to be speaking with you today. And thank you for that introduction here. I feel really fortunate and flattered to be speaking with you today.
Wonderful, wonderful, great. And so, Zach, as promised to the audience, let's pick a situation from your experience. And Zach will use the ABC framework. So we'll talk about the antecedents, what were the prior challenges, we'll talk about the behaviors, what were some of the actions that you took, and we'll talk about the conclusion, how things played out. So with that, Zach, pick a situation from your background and tell us what were the antecedents, what were the prior challenges?
Yeah, certainly here. For a lot of us as product marketers, we talk about product launches. Not many talk about how to use that same framework to launch a podcast. In the last 8 months, what was a really cool experience, along with myself and Gab and Eric, a co-host of our podcast, we wanted to launch a podcast for product marketers. Building a podcast is no different than building a product here, Nitin. Is that for a product to relate to customers, for it to drive sales, it has to be something that your target audience understands and gets. That's no different for a podcast. So the question we asked ourselves with this podcast that we launched back in November of 2023 is that how can we use the fundamentals of product marketing to build a podcast that resonates with our target audience and that's something that people want to listen to? And we broke it out through 4 principles of product marketing to how to get that from start to finish.
Wonderful. I think you laid out the challenges very well. And it is a crowded space, right? So creating a podcast, it's a crowded space. How do you stand out? And I love how, Zach, you pointed out this is synonymous with product marketing, right? We may launch a product in a crowded space. We have a lot of competitors, right? We need to differentiate. So wonderful. So great. We've talked about some of the prior challenges and you're trying to launch this podcast. Tell us about some of the actions and how did you get this podcast underway?
Yeah, certainly. I think one thing that we misunderstand about a podcast is that build it and they will come mentality. If I put a podcast out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, people are going to discover it. That's not the case. So earlier I said that there's 4 principles to product marketing. The first 2 principles really helped us nail down our POV. And the POV of like what is going to capture your attention, stop you, and give us a try. So the first of the 2 is knowing our audience here. A lot of us in product marketing, when we hear that everyone is our target audience, we groan. And why is that? Because we all know that what is most relevant is when it speaks to someone and not everyone. So with that mentality, not only just understanding our audience from like job title, like demographics, we wanted to go another layer here is that you and I, Nitin, are both product marketers. So that being said, depending on who you're talking to may have a different interpretation of your work as a product marketer. And influencing the revenue forward is harder when people don't get what you do as a product marketer. That was the focus of our audience right here. Going to the second principle, positioning. We talk a lot about positioning from the lens of messaging. Messaging is what you say. How I define positioning is like, hey, what you want the person to feel. It's like, for instance, you and I, like maybe we're training for a marathon, Nitin. You may say, hey, I like my Under Armours. I may say, I like Nike. They're both running shoes, but for whatever reason, the positioning, what resonates the most more, you have a different reason why you picked it. I have a different reason picking it. That's what we like to think about positioning, and that's second component of that killer POV. So knowing our audience so far, we could have easily said, Nathan, it's like, hey, this show's called We're Product Marketers. it's clear, it's obvious. Like if I was in B2B, like I get it, but we decided to take an opposite approach. We called it "We're not marketers." Well, how come? This is a similar sentiment. It feels like an inside joke as a product marketer too, and that's what you want your audience to. You want something that's so intimate that you and I can get, and not necessarily like everyone gets to, and that's totally okay. And so when we decided that, that was a POV that started a conversation that captured attention. And now when we started that conversation, it opens up that mind share for us to change and think how people act. A lot of people today still disagree with that point of view, but without a disagreement, how can you shape the conversation? How can you learn from each other? So those are the two components that helped us kind of form the podcast and set the foundation of like all the episodes you've seen here so far.
Fabulous, fabulous. I love, Zach, how you laid that out. The system thinking in terms of, again, looking at this as your product, right? So I love that. So great. Thank you for setting the stage and telling us about some of the actions. Now bring it home, Zach. Tell us about the conclusion. How did this play out? And of course, your podcast is amazing. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, certainly here. So what you all don't see is like the numbers behind it too. And like above all, like numbers matter, but do something that you have fun doing and you're enjoying it too. So when we first came to what we've seen so far is that across every consistent episode, we're seeing about over 100 listens, a few hundred downloads too. Currently, right now, we have about 26 5-star reviews off from Apple Podcasts and Spotify here. And we're about to launch I believe our 15th episode in the next week. And when I say the next week, this will be on March 25th, where about 70-80% of B2B companies struggle to get past the single digit mark for a podcast episode. It's been a very consistent effort. So how we've done that too? So I mentioned 2 of the 4 components of kind of like the go-to-market principles of product marketing. I'm going to share the other 2. The third piece of that was we thought about what's the launch. If we said that if a podcast is a product, think of every episode of like a feature. All right. Like when we're talking about, hey, we want to speak to product marketers who feel misunderstood. We want to provide podcast to help them understand what does good product marketing fundamentals look like to be more influential and to have a stronger say and a seat at the table if you're a non-enterprise organization. We thought about, okay, what are the topics that you care about? Think about messaging, enablement, go-to-market strategy, career growth. So it was really cool. We brought in different, like, similar to your conversation, bringing different influencers in the space who are like well-versed on that. So such as like Jason Oakley, we had Anthony Pieri come into as well. We had Madison Leonard, Tamar Gromitsky. There's several names. We're so fortunate when we built that audience and that just having a candid conversation. Although podcasts are as a crowded space, it's one of the more under-leveraged channels that businesses use to build their audience, to inform their point of view. So like the second fourth final piece of how we got those numbers up across 14 episodes is the enablement. So when we talk about enablement as product marketers, enablement is a black box. And what that typically sounds like is like create a one-pager, create a pitch deck for the sales team, and that's it. But if we were to change the definition to enablement from building content to the context needed on how to best get value from the product, this will shift how you are thinking about enablement. If I can get your attention with like a clip, maybe I can get you to listen to an episode. If I see you check out this, maybe you would check out our website. So when you think of enablement, think about like similar to how we do as product marketing today. It's that we're trying to distill a complicated topic to the most simple terms. That's no different from enablement. You're taking this big product, you're taking this big feature, and you're trying to break off components either in the form of a demo, either in the form of like a seller cheat sheet. You're repurposing your framework to make it easier to digest for a new user or to maintain engagement with an existing listener too. So that's a bit about how we use the product marketing fundamentals to build and launch our podcast to the successes that you may have seen across your LinkedIn profile, on LinkedIn feed here today.
Wonderful, wonderful, Zach. That was so much to take in. A couple of things I'll just highlight for the audience. I think you pointed out how you use the product marketing frameworks to treat the podcast as your product and used all those analogies in order to build the podcast out, and use the ability to cut through the noise, right? There's so much noise out there. So you cut through the noise and we're able to make that podcast successful. So congratulations. And this is a great episode. So I think I learned a lot. I think the audience learned a lot as well. Zach, tell us, if people wanted to learn more about you and what's next, where can people find you?
That's a great question here, Nathan. Thank you for that. Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. I know this episode will share a link to my profile, so connect with me, shoot me a message here. If you want to hear more about like kind of what we're talking about, take a listen to the episode, check our company page on LinkedIn. We're Not Marketers. If not, listen to the episode. Maybe our memes will give you a good laugh and like just resonate to the daily struggles and successes of being a product marketer in the B2B SaaS space.
Absolutely fabulous. So there you have it, folks. Definitely hit up Zach on LinkedIn. If you believe that product marketers are not marketers, you definitely need to check out the show. If you believe product marketers are marketers, you still need to check it out to see what the counter opinion is. So exactly. Wonderful. Zach, once again, thank you so much. And my friends, armed with that knowledge, let's make the magic happen.